All right, thank you, Amanda, and thank you all for sticking it out until this afternoon session. I just want to thank the organizers for this conference. It's been amazing. Unfortunately, it's the first day of classes at UNL, so I've had to kind of come in and out of various sessions, but I'm glad they're all being recorded because I look forward to going back and being able to truly focus as I watch all the wonderful presentations today. So today I'm going to tell you about a project that was created a while ago, but it's on a comeback right now. And so I hope that many of you are interested in it, and maybe we could collaborate moving forward. So just a little bit first about me. I am a professor in the School of Biological Sciences at UNL, and I study arachnids, and I study sensory systems of arachnids. So on this bottom left picture, this is an ogre-faced spider that has huge eyes, and my lab studies why they have such large eyes, how these eyes function. This is another arachnid order here. They're actually not spiders, but they're relatives of spiders. And these animals have their first pair of legs that are modified into these really long antenna-like legs. And a lot of my research focuses on how and why these legs are so long, how they function. We also study mating systems in spiders. There are some crazy stories of spiders in Nebraska. For example, this bottom right picture, this is a species in which as soon as the males inseminate a female, they curl up and they eventually die. 100% of the time, males die when they mate with females. And so a lot of my research is trying to figure out, again, how and why that happens. And then another whole branch of research in my lab studies communication. How and why animals use the sensory modalities they do to communicate, how the environment influences that. So all of my research asks broad evolutionary, ecological, behavioral questions, and I use arachnids as my study organisms. But not only do I do research, over the years, I have done quite a bit of science education. And I learned really early on that arachnids are very engaging. So the general public, whether they enjoy and are interested in arachnids or whether they're terrified of them, it's easy to engage people with arachnids. And so starting as a graduate student, I would do a lot of work with youth groups, with Girl Scout troops. I would lead spider walks at night, and that kind of evolved over the years to more formal, informal science learning activities like running summer camps and developing the program I'm going to tell you about today. So as we all know, our planet, our nations, our society, we need science. We need to understand science. We need to be able to think knowledgeably about data that we're given to make decisions about ourselves, about what we eat, about whether to get vaccinated, about other issues with our health. And we need science to solve both local and global challenges. We need workforce development in the sciences. Again, a working knowledge of science helps in daily decision making. And we all know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you all do an amazing job of this, but formal education is insufficient to support lifelong science literacy. And so we really need to turn to these informal science learning environments. Many of the places that all of you work at, museums, zoos, social media apps, after-school science clubs, radio shows, podcasts, TV shows. Basically, we need to surround our youth and our community in science in a way that makes it digestible and fun and engaging. So we know that in formal science settings, there are very strict standards, and I know that there was a talk on this earlier today too, the next generation science standards. But in informal science learning, there's a lot more flexibility, which is frankly one of the reasons many of us are probably drawn to informal science learning. But I think a lot of we can make more impact if we can start to bridge these formal and informal science learning programs. So the other thing I'm very passionate about is trying to kind of bridge all of the different communities that are trying to engage our community and our youth in science learning. And I know, again, that's a main function of this conference, which is why I'm very excited to be here. So we have these formal education settings, but then we have the out-of-school programs that we've heard a lot about today. But then we also need to bring it home to families, to businesses. And my work and my proposal is that spiders and other arachnids can actually help us bring all of these units together. So I try to use arachnids to bridge formal and informal science learning, and the program I'm going to tell you about today is one that tried to do that. So this all stemmed from a National Science Foundation grant that I received back in 2013. And it was a program that unfortunately is no longer available, but it was called Connecting Researchers and Public Audiences. And the idea was that researchers who have funded science projects could apply for extra funding to in some way connect their research to the public. And so with this grant, so this was the goal of the grant, to convey to diverse audiences key features of their research, such as methods, results, and significance. So with this grant, I had two main components. One was developing after-school science programs, and the other was developing an interactive informal science education event. The after-school science programs, I have developed a course at UNL called Communicating Science Through Outreach that has been taught on and off since 2012. It's been taught more than 9 times. And in partnership with the community learning centers in Lincoln, UNL students develop after-school science clubs for middle school students throughout the city. This is a partnership that has been amazing. It has been incredibly successful. Some of my key partners at the community learning centers have since retired, so I will be looking for more partners. So if anyone is interested in partnering with UNL students to run after-school science clubs, please reach out to me. But the program I want to talk to you about today is this interactive informal science education program, and I call it 8-Legged Encounters. And it ran for the first time in 2013 at Morrill Hall. And there was a lot of advertisement for it. As you can see, there was a line out the door at Morrill Hall, and we had over 800 people through in just 3 hours. So it was hugely successful, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it encompassed. But first, I'm going to show you a video. So we took 8-Legged Encounters multiple places around the country, and this is a video filmed at the Denver Museum of Science and Nature.
So inside of here, there's a little book, and you take it to each one of the stations, you get a stamp on it, and then at the end, there's a place to get a prize.
Oh, yeah. All right.
And there's arts and crafts in the middle.
Okay.
John, you get one?
We already saw the surprises.
They're called smoothies. They like smoothies. They have they like their bug smoothies. They have you want that one?
Like all arachnids.
You take that
And
one.
2 body sections.
It's a great event for natural history museums because one of the main missions of a natural history museum is to educate people about the importance of the natural environment and natural history in general. So an event like this gives us an opportunity to present great information, accurate information about a component of the natural environment that people may have never really thought about much. So it's a great way to sort of open their minds and to teach them about animals that they may have seen, they may have wondered about, but they really haven't had an opportunity to learn much about these organisms. And it's a fun way to present that information. It's an educational way. They get really good information and in a really interactive way.
what we actually have here at the Denver Museum is a small subset of all the activities that we have. So at this point, we have more than 25 activity stations. We've brought 14 of them here. One of the big ones that I've used at various venues is this Path of Predators, where there's a booklet that kids get when they walk in, and they get a bag with a booklet and a pencil. And as they go around, they're focused on the 11 different arachnid orders. And each arachnid order has a station associated with it. And there's typically a live animal, there's an activity, there's trading cards. And so as they go to each table, they can get a trading card. And as they complete the activity, they get a stamp in their booklet. And this stamp is actually on a phylogenetic tree showing the evolutionary relationships of all of the different arachnid groups. So as they get their stamp, they can say, oh, amblypygids are really closely related to spiders. I wouldn't have thought that before. And then once they complete all of their stamps, they can go and they get a prize. And then we have a series of crafts that focus on different things. So we have one focused on camouflage, and we use the crab spider, which can actually change colors based on what flower it's on. It can change from yellow to white. And so they build their own tissue paper flower, and then we have little cut up spiders that they can then put on their flower and realize, oh, is this standing out or is this camouflaged? We have a clay station where they can create their own chelicerate, where they get a Ziploc bag of air dry clay, 8 black pipe cleaners, 2 yellow and 2 blue. And what they learn is that with this material, they create a chelicerate. And so they learn, oh, first we need to separate the clay into 2 parts, because all arachnids, all chelicerates have 2 body parts. And then, oh, there's 8 black pipe cleaners because they all have 8 legs. And there's 2 yellow pipe cleaners representing the pedipalps and 2 blue representing the chelicerae. So there's a series of kind of craft activities that, again, all are designed to convey some knowledge.
You got it!
Okay, so hopefully that gave you a good overview of what an 8-legged encounter event can be like. And so again, this event leverages arachnids for informal science learning. And the way that I separated out the modules initially is that I had several that dealt with classification and taxonomy, several that dealt with spiders and spider silk. And then I had a path of predators and some hands-on science. And so all of these I tried to align with the next generation science standards as well. And all of this was done in collaboration with a local artist here in Lincoln, Nebraska, Paul Tisdale, who is not a scientific illustrator. And I did that on purpose because I really wanted to kind of pull in an artist and get a very different interpretation of the animals that I know very well, but that he did not know very well. And so all of the artwork is done by local artist Paul Tisdale. So I just want to give you a couple brief examples of some of the different activities. And this is actually now a published paper, and I have on my website some materials for these. Since this was published, we've developed many, many more and continue to develop more. And so if you have any interest, please let me know. So these are just some different examples. This is what the table looks like in the publication, what the module is, what next generation science standards they cover, and then a little bit of background about the particular activity and the game. And so, for example, the Assemble an Arachnid activity has drawings of first and second body parts of all of the 11 arachnid orders in piles, and families, youth, kids can come and grab a first body part and a second body part and then color them and paste them together and kind of create a Frankenstein arachnid, if you will. And then we have a key that says what you created if you put these 2 different body parts together. We have a spiders and silk section that focuses a lot on the amazing characteristics and attributes of spider silk. And again, these are just a few of those. The one that I'll tell you about, which is always a hit, is called Catch a Moth. So for those of you who don't know, there are these spiders called bolus spiders that instead of building a web to catch their prey, they build a single strand of silk. And at the very bottom of that silk, they deposit a sticky droplet. It's like a gluey substance. And then they release from their body chemical odors that smell just like female moths. So these are called pheromones. They emit these pheromones, and male moths that are flying through the air are attracted to this. And then these spiders literally twirl this bolus in the air and fish for these moths out of the air and pull them in and eventually eat them. So it's a really cool story. It's very fascinating. And so what we've created is an activity where we actually have hanging moths on strings with Velcro, and then ping pong balls with Velcro on strings. And you can play the game Catch a Moth, where you try and use your bolus to catch moths that are hanging. This is where if we were in person, I would actually make you guys get up and play this game, but unfortunately it's hard to do online. So we'll wait till next time when we're in person and you can play Catch a Moth. Okay, so the next one was touched on in the video. It's called The Path of Predators. And this is the design of the cover. It basically is an accordion style booklet that opens up, and each page of that accordion style booklet is an arachnid order. And on the very first page, it invites you to grab a pencil, journey through the exhibits, and discover the wonderful world of arachnids. And this is where this is a modified phylogenetic tree that shows the relationships of arachnids. So for example, Ricynulii and the Sulfugi are closest together. Those are, according to this hypothesized relationship, very close relatives. So as you accomplish each station, you get a stamp in your booklet. And then at the end, you take it up to your reward station, show that you got all your stamps, and you get a prize. These are the stamps. Again, all of this is original artwork done by Paul Tisdale, the stamps, the booklet, everything. We also have trading cards associated with each station. And so as you complete a station, you get your stamp, but you can also get a trading card. So this is an example of what one might look like. This is the order Amblypygi, and we invite people to look at how long these first pair of legs are. And the activity is to actually reach your hand into a box and feel something and write down the description. And every page has a little at-home section too, where we suggest some activities that they can do at home. So for each station, we have 3 by 5 foot foam boards that are all created by Paul. So these are just some of the amazing, beautiful artwork that he created for each of the different arachnid orders. We were invited to take this to the National Science Foundation STEM Festival in 2015, but we couldn't bring all of the exhibits. And so we brought only 4 of the stations, and Paul painted 6 by 8 foot canvases. Sorry, my cat's moving the my computer. 6 by 8 foot canvases of original artwork for these 4 orders that we brought with us to Washington, DC. Okay, and then hands-on science. We have Microscope Madness, where we have microscopes set up and a lot of different specimens of arachnids and some sheets that they can look at and try and figure out what family a particular spider is, whether it's male or female. And then we've only done this at Morrill Hall because it takes a lot to put it together, and Morrill Hall is right here. So I was able to work with the wonderful museum here to put this together. But the community experiment was one where we invited people to participate and gave them a headlamp and a collecting vial. And there was a black curtain separating off a room. They would walk into the room with a guide, with a volunteer, who would instruct them to turn on their headlamp and look for spider eye shines. Now, previously, we had collected hundreds of spiders and put them in plastic tubs filled with peat moss around the room. And as you shine, these are wolf spiders, which have a light reflecting layer in their eye that reflects light back. And these lights look like little emeralds. And so we asked people to look for these little emerald eye shines throughout the room. As they did, they saw that it was a spider, and they got to collect their own spider out of these tubs. And then we brought them out and showed them the experiment that they were going to do. So they had just collected their experimental subject, and on their vial, there was either a blue dot or a green dot. And this represented the treatment for their experiment. So they either were going to run their experiment on filter paper, or they were going to run it on granite. And the experiment was asking the question, what senses do spiders use to capture prey? And filter paper transmits vibrations very, very well, but granite does not. So specifically, we were looking at the sense of vibrations. Are spiders using vibration sense to find prey? So they were given an experimental station where there were live crickets, some forceps, a stopwatch, and an arena. And there were instructions. They were told to drop the cricket in the arena and start the stopwatch and time how long it took the spider to catch the prey. And then they went over to a computer, they entered their data, and they could see the graph change in real time, how the addition of their data changed the results. And then following the experiment, we actually wrote up a mock paper and emailed it to everybody who left their email addresses. So we did some evaluation of this event, and specifically, one of the questions was how well do each of the different activities engage the public? So we wanted to know how interested they were. We wanted to know how effective the volunteers were. At every station, there were people there trying to engage those as they were moving through. We wanted to look at whether participating in the event changed attitudes towards spiders, and whether it increased or had any effect on their interest in science. So this is an example of a survey. We again did it at Morrill Hall. We surveyed people at the Butterfly Pavilion outside of Denver. We took surveys of people when we did it at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and then also at the Toledo Zoo. So to look at how interested participants were in the different activities, these are just the abbreviations of the different event spaces. So this is the Denver Museum, this is the Butterfly Pavilion, this is the Nebraska State Museum at Morrill Hall, and then these are the different activities. And this is just an example of what it looks like. 79, up to 79 people participated in answering this, and the blue is that they were very interested. The purple is not interested at all. And if you just I'm not going to go through each of these, but if you just look across, you see that there was a lot of interest. People were either very interested or interested in most of these activities, and there was very little responses of not interested. So in general, people seemed to very much enjoy these. We also did surveys specifically of the youth. And again, the youth also, in fact, seemed even more positive than the families did that were filling it out together. So how effective were the volunteers and the artwork? So again, this is asking the first question, how effective were volunteers? And then how effective was the artwork? And you can see that the volunteers in particular, over 85% of people said that they were very effective, and 68% of people said the artwork was very effective at engaging with the exhibit. In terms of changing attitudes towards spiders, we asked the youth if they wanted to learn more about spiders after this event. We asked everyone if participating in the activity made them want to read more about arachnids, if they were more or less likely to take the time to observe a spider, and then we asked about their propensity to kill a spider. So we saw that a large proportion of people of youth wanted to learn more about spiders, and the majority of people also were more interested in reading about arachnids and more interested in observing them in the future. In terms of killing a spider, only 40% of the people said that they were more or less likely to kill a spider. And we realized afterwards that this is really not a great question because we didn't know what their baseline was. So a lot of people coming to this event may have already been interested in spiders and excited about spiders. And so maybe the event didn't change their minds at all. Okay, in terms of science interest, we asked whether they were interested in learning about scientific discoveries. We asked the youth if they were interested in learning more about science. And then we asked the youth about jobs in science. And again, across the board, we got very positive responses that we seemed to have an increase in interest in science. Okay, so we saw positive effects of all of these, which we are very excited about. The biggest thing was just the verbal responses and the parents coming up and sharing how they didn't want to come to the event, but their kid made them, and they were very glad they did because they walked away learning something. So this brings me to now. We have recently written a collaboration initiative grant between UNO, so University of Nebraska Omaha, University of Nebraska Kearney, and University of Nebraska Lincoln to bring eight-legged encounters back and try to bring it to more audiences across the state. So on March 5th, Eight-Legged Encounters is going to be held at the Crane Trust out in Kearney. And so we invite you to come, we invite you to invite your students, your coworkers, your colleagues, your friends, your families. And this will be, we will have a series of training modules that UNL, UNK, and UNL graduate and undergraduate students will take to train in science communication. And then they will get trained on this material and they will be the volunteers that are presenting it at the Crane Trust. The idea is that we will have one next fall and then the spring of 2023. And those will be in Omaha and Nebraska, and I mean Omaha and Lincoln, but we're not sure the order yet. Okay, then the last thing I want to plug is that I have been trying to increase the presence of an iNaturalist project called Webb's Nebraska Arachnids. I taught an arachnology course at UNL this last fall where I recruited arachnologists from all over the world to help ID spiders as people took pictures and uploaded them. And it worked tremendously well. So we now have a really solid base. We have over 542 observations. And this is something that at all of your camps, in all of your organizations, all you need is a phone, the app, and a camera on it, and you can encourage your youth and families to go out and take pictures of arachnids and add them to this iNaturalist site, which is going to be increasing our knowledge of the natural world of Nebraska. We know surprisingly little actually about arachnids in Nebraska. We've already just in one semester of using this heavily, found multiple new range extensions for species. So I encourage you to get involved in the iNaturalist app as well. So with that, there are so many people to thank. And I want to make sure I leave time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and open it up for questions.
First of all, as a spider not enthusiast, I appreciate all the information that you presented. I learned a lot just looking at the different stations that you had, and it made me want to learn more about spiders. So that looks like a fun event, in my opinion. I wish that I lived closer to you so we could go and see it. So what questions do people have? One question that I have, could you share the link with your activities, or you said you were going to share some of that information, and that, like I said, I really want to try the ping pong ball on a string, so I'd be interested in learning more about that activity.
Yes, I will. As hopefully people have questions or comments, I will look that up right now and put it in the chat.
Excellent. And I'll make sure that gets shared to our Jamboard as well, because we do have a thing on there with some different additional resources. And with that tie-in, there is the link to the Jamboard. Feel free to get on there. We've got a couple slides asking mentor-mentee questions. We also have the resource pages that we'll put this on there as well, along with anybody is going to attend a workshop tomorrow. Those links are listed on our Jamboard for you to go and to pre-register or to register for those workshops that are happening tomorrow. Awesome. Oh, the question in the chat is, how do you address arachnophobia and arachnophobes?
Yeah, that is such a great question, Sasha. You know, my ignorant attitude had always been that arachnophobes just don't know enough. You know, spiders are so cool. And if they just knew a little bit more and knew some stories, they would, that would change their minds. And I will say that is true for some people that have maybe, you know, learned to be scared of spiders, but there are a lot of people who truly have a phobia. And for those people, I have yet to figure out how to reach them. These are the people who, you know, won't even come within 15 feet of any of the tables. These are the people that I have literally had people, when I give seminars, come up and apologize and say that they would love to hear my talk, but they can't actually sit through a seminar where on a screen there are giant images of spiders. And so I will say that I am right now collaborating with someone in the psychology department and the political science department actually here at UNL to start a study on arachnophobia. And so we're actually, the IRB is in right now. Hopefully it will be approved soon. And we're going to do this study in collaboration, in conjunction with the new eight-legged encounter events, and actually see if we can gather some data on whether or not some of these informal science learning engagements can actually alter fear of spiders. And that is ideally going to be the baseline for a future grant where we'll dig into that a little bit more. But right now, I do not have a good answer to that.
So folks were wanting some specific details on the course number on your communicating science and outreach class.
Okay, so that course is taught it used to be taught every semester, but right now it's taught every other fall. But the idea is that hopefully soon I will get some partners at UNL to start teaching it more often. So it's called Communicating Science Through Outreach, and it is 480/880. So it's an upper level undergrad graduate course. And the first several weeks of the course, we go through what is informal versus formal science, what are ways in which people learn. We go through the format of learning styles and learn how we each learn best. We go over the next generation science standards and the Nebraska state science standards. We walk through a lot of informal science activities where I engage them as if they were youth. And then we eventually partner with one of the Title I middle schools in Lincoln. And students get together in teams. And for the rest of the semester, so typically 8 to 12 weeks at that point, they work together every week and develop their own hour-long informal science learning program for these after-school clubs. And what we do in class time, once the clubs start, is they actually trial run them in the class and get feedback from other students and make modifications before they actually take them to the school. So the first couple of weeks, we meet 3 times a week. And then as soon as they start going to their after school clubs, we drop it down and we only meet twice a week for the rest of the semester.
That sounds amazing. And I really wish that was around when I was in school. Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful course. I want to sign up again. I don't know.
It is really fun.
Right. Yeah, I can only imagine getting in there, especially with the you said middle school.
Yep.
Oh, that's a hard age sometimes. I tell you what. What other questions do folks have? We've got probably another 10 minutes-ish. So wanting to know, does folks have any other questions or things they were wanting to know about this great program that engages communities? So are you looking for other host venues, future venues to host an event?
Yes, definitely, for sure. Especially in rural parts of Nebraska. I would love to take it as many places as we can.
If you want to come out west, I'll hook you up. And I think Jen is at Shram, so we'll get you. We got some spaces.
That would be awesome. Yes, I would love that.
So what other cool spider research projects are you currently involved in?
Well, so with those non-spider arachnids, the ones that have the really, really long legs, we're doing a lot of studies with those right now, looking at their learning, their capacity for learning, which are really exciting. So these are animals, you know, most people don't think of arachnids as being particularly smart or, you know, having very high cognitive abilities. But these animals have a part of their brain that actually is thought to integrate information from different sensory modalities and thought to be a place where learning and memory happens. And that place in their brain is actually the largest of any other arthropod. So they have this processing center in their brains that is huge. And so just based on the neuroanatomy, these animals should be brilliant. And so we're doing a lot of research to actually figure out how that specialized brain region translates into sophisticated behavior. And so a lot of the research we've done looks at their ability to navigate, and it turns out, are amazing navigators. But a study that we're doing right now is looking at their learning and trying to figure out if they can, so we know that they can learn. We know that they can learn to distinguish different smells. We know that they can learn to distinguish different surfaces, so they can distinguish two different grains of sandpaper. But right now we're really interested in whether they can learn concepts. So can they learn same or different? And that is a cognitive ability that is often thought to be reserved for humans and primates and, you know, other vertebrates that we tend to think of as really smart. But we actually think that these animals can do it. And so that, I think, is one of the most exciting projects we're working on right now, is to try to figure out a way to ask that question with animals that are so very different than us that it's sometimes hard to figure out the correct experimental design. But we're making really good progress. So that is one really exciting project. I could go on, but if other people
my mind is completely blown. Like, I did not even, like, it makes sense that you're doing these experiments with spiders, but this is so cool. This is amazing. I love spiders a little bit more every time. I didn't know that they would have so much knowledge that they could possibly learn. That's amazing.
right?
All right. So do we have any other questions that folks are wanting to learn a little bit more about? Well, I want to thank you for opening my eyes to how cool arachnids are. I was kind of a doubter, and you turned me around. I'm not gonna lie. I think they're pretty cool now, and I'm really excited to see this 8-legged encounters come back, because I think that those activities sound really, really cool. So thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come and present with us at the Elevating Conservation Conference. And like I said, blowing my mind on how cool arachnids really are.
Well, thank you all so much. And I apologize I went so fast. I blew through everything. So hopefully you were able to process it all.